This is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we are live on the air with Melbourne, Australia band Treebeard, and you guys are a post-rock, post-metal band. And I said from Melbourne, you guys are, and yeah, like it's really interesting to be able to talk to people from around the world, and that's why we're chatting here at 7 a.m. my time. But we also has a preview from your Nostalgia album from 2021 that we're gonna bring up. But we like to go behind the music. They can go up to like an hour, depends on how in depth we go with it. But we do have a sponsor that we have to mention. Newsly.me is an iOS and Android app. And if you use the coupon code GHOST2021, you get 1 month free premium subscription. So what Newsly does is it reads the news back to you in a human voice, so you can stop scrolling and start listening. So again, use coupon code GHOST2021. That still works. You get 1 month free premium subscription. And then I've also got one more sponsor that I'll grab real quick. It's a European online lottery company called Double Jack Online. If you take your Android phone and scan that, you can do online Powerball and Keno, and you can also become an influencer for them and gain passive income. And they do NFTs and they do crowdfunding. So if you're able to do an album, you can get in touch with them and they can help you set up a crowdfunding campaign. So that's the end of the sponsors. And then I also have your link tree I'm going to pull up. And you're going to keep that going through the whole thing. So that's good, right?
Sweet. Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay. So I've got a preview. I like to have the audience actually hear the band before we get to the interview. So I've actually got a preview from this album that you did called Nostalgia. And we're going to play it and we'll put you on mute. We're going to play maybe like 4 or 5 minutes of it. And then we'll come back and do the full interview. Is that okay?
Sounds great.
Sounds great. Hope everyone digs it.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. I'll put you on mute and then we'll get into it. All right, so let's go.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Marching into decay, collapse on your double-edged blade. Can't you pay your debt with so much left unsaid? So glad to see you there in this living hell you share. construct on you if we only
Hey guys, I'm back. I just wanted to give a full picture of what you sound like. So let me get you off of mute. So yeah, that's fantastic. In an age where there's so many people in the box, and it's the age of hip hop, it's cool to see a band actually out there kicking ass.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks so much for first of all, just having us on, and second of all, sort of platforming our music to your listeners. I hope they enjoyed it, and as you said, sort of got a bit of a sense of how, while we do sort of identify within post rock as a genre, we're not necessarily tied to any one style of song or dynamic of song. We like to change it up pretty much with everything we do, I think. Yeah.
That's one thing I'm very interested in. If you see my kind of vibe on Instagram, is expansive sound experiments is my kind of grouped symbol or production company for my own stuff, because I like to go everywhere. And I like funk, I like progressive rock bands like Genesis and Yes, but I also like bands like Black Flag and Husker Du and the Ramones and the Replacements. So I kind of always like the punk aesthetic. I like Nirvana, I like Pearl Jam, I like grunge, but I like punk. I mean, I started I'm 54 years old, and when I was a kid, I saw Joy Division on MTV.
Wow.
And the first thing I was like, well, that's what I want to do, right? And then and then they turned into New Order, and then I started looking for synths. And I always thought that the kind of Depeche Mode, Trent Reznor, Joy Division kind of take on synths is the way I try to do things, is they kind of have a punk aesthetic. And so I've always tried to do it, even though it's electronic, I try to give a punk aesthetic to what I'm doing, or like a rock kind of band aesthetic to it. So when did you guys, who wants to go first? Because I always ask the question, like, when did you first get into music, and like what age? So who wants to go first with that question?
Up to you, sir.
I'll go first, I suppose. So I suppose music was always a big part of my upbringing, I guess, just through my parents, being in the car listening to whatever. I remember a lot of Queen. Bohemian Rhapsody is a vivid memory of mine when I was a kid, I think, just because it was just such a out there, wacky song for a kid to listen to. But as I got older, realized how brilliant it actually is as a song as well, beyond the goofy sort of opera bit. But I would say I probably got really into music around age 10 or so. Linkin Park was the sort of gateway band for me, because they were pretty big at the time in that sort of early 2000s period. And obviously, being a kid, I wasn't very accustomed to the more harsher, extreme elements of rock or metal music. So Linkin Park were very palatable for me from that age, and really serve as a great gateway to getting into everything else I listen to now. But started off on drums and eventually to bass, and then now guitar, which is what I play at Treebeard, sort of my main instrument these days. Yeah,
and my, I guess, background with music, I luckily grew up in quite a musical family. My dad used to work at Yamaha and used to sort of be around the recording studio when they'd have like Kylie Minogue and John Farnham and like Ice House come through, and awesome. So I was luckily sort of exposed to a lot of great music as a kid. I know when I was like in kinder, I was from a very early age, I used to take like Marilyn Manson tapes into kindergarten. Like I had like the Dope Show on a cassette tape and would take that into my little kindergarten class. And Nick Cave as well. Red Right Hand was like my favorite song as a kid. Pretty dark shit, I guess, from that age. But I guess what sort of got me into playing music was Kiss. Randomly, I think, that was just.
Well, I'm a child of the 70s, so Kiss was like I was there when they first showed up, and it's like all the parents were outraged, right?
Yeah,
it was like total outrage. Like they were like they're drinking, they're spitting blood, they're like doing all this demonic stuff, and like I'm coming from a black family that's going to church, and they're like. What are you listening to? What is that? What is that? It's like, well, it's cool. It's cool. It's like, my dad said, that's not cool.
Yeah, I loved, I guess, just how over the top it was. And as a kid, when you're looking at dudes in makeup with explosions coming off the stage and riffing guitar solos, it was like, yeah, it was just, it really spoke to me. And I picked up guitar because of Ace Frehley and sort of went down that rock path for a while. And I think in my teen years got into the more metal side of things, got into bands like Gojira, Black Dahlia Murder, Cannibal Corpse, sort of went down that route. And just, yeah, I think nowadays I listen to everything, but yeah, had sort of humble beginnings with rock music growing up.
So you've been working on it since you were like 10, 12 years old. And I think that's a very interesting thing because I've interviewed about 140 emerging independent bands. And every time I deal with guys who are singer-songwriters, they almost every one of them, like 90% of them, say that they started like when they're like 10 or 12. It's just interesting that like music seems to be kind of like people have a tendency to kind of have it like within them, in my opinion. You kind of it finds you, and you are kind of like this kind of idea of the Victorian poets. Because I started off as a poet, and there's the idea like the muse or the universe. I think all artists, whether you're a painter or an actor or musician, you kind of tap into that, and you either have that or you don't have it. And if you have it, you just you can become a multi-instrument player. You can be like drums, you can play everything. You get into production, you get deep into songwriting. You're not just a singer, you actually can write, you can produce. It just seems like that's what I always try to focus on, the folks that can kind of do that or in that zone.
For sure. I don't think it's sorry, you go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
I think it was interesting you pointed out that a lot of people seem to gravitate to music around that 10 to 12 going into adolescent years kind of thing, because I guess life gets a lot more complicated once you get into your teenage years, and music can sort of take on that muse role in your life, as you sort of outlined, where like music does kind of act as a distraction or a reprieve from a lot of the stuff.
Did you find that you know whether you're going to be big or not? What I found with most creative types is like, I was with some guys when I was young, right? And we did like bar bands, and then their girlfriends and wives told them to stop, right? But I was the type of person like the creativity wasn't something that my wife or my daughter's going to tell me to stop, or anybody that I know was going to tell me. It's just it was so inherently inside of me that I was never going to stop, right? No matter what anybody says. And it seems like to me that's the type of person that's like you're going to do it whether you're in the top 10 or the top bottom 200 or 1,000. You just do it because you believe in it. You want it. It's like a reprieve for your soul. You know what I mean? That you feel like it actually helps you, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think like being creative is just sort of a non-negotiable for the both of us, and something that sort of always motivates us in every aspect of our life. And whether Treebeard ends up being playing to thousands and thousands of people every night, or just a really quiet local shows, I think we're really keen to do it, and it sort of does something, like you said, for our souls that nothing else can do. So that's kind of why we do it.
So like when you started to have an appreciation when you're like 10 or 12, were you actually writing your own music at that like age, or when did you start really writing your own material?
It took a long time for sure. I remember learning each instrument that I did learn growing up. It was entirely just playing songs by bands that I was into at the time. So a lot of like grunge music, a lot of sort of new metal. I was never really good enough to play the real metal stuff. So I did love listening to it, but I was never very good at the speed. But it was a gradual process because I didn't think of myself as a writer for a very long time, and I'd been playing in bands where I was kind of the new guy, more or less, where I was coming into a situation where the band already had a pre-established sound and knew what they were going for, which was always really cool. I loved playing in every band I've ever been in, pretty much. But after a while, I would be playing, and I would write something at home, and I'd be like, I actually like this. And I'd like to do something with it, but it never really fit the mold of any of the bands I was in at the time. So it would have been like around early 20s, like 21, 22. I'm 26 now, so it's very recent for me, I guess.
For the last 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah, more or less. And thankfully, I've been lucky enough to have come across some very great musicians like Reese throughout my time playing in bands. So I was able to sort of get some really talented people working in this project that I started as a solo thing with Treebeard. And now it's sort of blossomed into, this really cool thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I've kind of had the opposite journey, I think, to Pat, where I was kind of always doing bands where I was the main songwriter, probably from writing my music maybe from like the age of 15, 16 onwards. And I guess going through that journey of figuring out my sound and figuring out what I wanted to do, and played in a few bands where I guess I was the main songwriter, like Pat is in Treebeard at the moment. And I think personally, I play bass in Treebeard, and after sort of going through that journey myself, I found more value out of seeing someone else's dream come together and being able to help them bring it to life. There was something more inspiring in that for me, rather than writing my own songs, getting sick of my own songs, going through that whole thing. But having someone else's perspective on music and having that sort of put in front of me to help put my own spin on is like really inspiring for me. So I think, that's kind of where we're at with Treebeard and the kind of perspectives we're coming from.
You guys are like a quartet? You have four guys?
Yes. So,
The cool thing I like about bands, because I've been in bands, and I started like in punk kind of Ramones, New York Doll kind of Velvet Underground inspired stuff. I started like in 78, 79 with my brothers in the basement with a drummer from high school and another guitar player from high school, and we were just totally enthralled with like the Ramones and Who's Skidoo and the Replacements and stuff like that. And I was the primary songwriter for a long time, and I was a keyboardist. And I found some old like mini mode, and I was using that. And everybody was saying, "Well, how can you use that in a rock band?" And I said, "Well, go listen to Genesis. Go listen to the Yes."
Yeah.
What you're talking about, like John Paul Jones is playing synths on Zeb. So I would always be the kind of guy like, go listen to Funkadelic. I would point where you music, right, and show where it wasn't cheesy. Show where it was actually a Bernie Worrell or a Stevie Wonder, or like even T. Townsend on like Barbara O'Reilly. It's like there's you can do, even like Rush, Geddy Lee. Like there's stuff you can do, and you can be impressive, and you don't have to sound cheesy. You can, and I like the dynamic of being in a band. Because like you guys are saying, like I was a primary songwriter, but when I got four guys together, then suddenly like I had a demo and maybe I had an 808 beat, but the real drummer's going to take that and actually like throw my 808 away and do the drums. And then the bass, if I did it on the Moog, is like either I would get to keep it because I did something interesting, or the bass player would take it over because they did a better take on it. And I think that kind of collaboration to me was always fantastic. I haven't been in a band for a little while. I've just been doing solo stuff. But yeah, the dynamic of a band is like, that kind of makes you excited every time you get into a session, because like you have an idea, but when you have four personalities come into that idea, is that what you really like about being in a band format?
Oh yeah, it's so cool. I think, like I was saying, Pat's the main songwriter of Treebeard, but when he brings a song, we sort of all interpret it in our own way with our own experiences, our own influences. And, it just turns into something, the core idea is still there, but it turns into something, I guess, much bigger than what was originally sort of, planned out. And that's, it's that collaborative process of just seeing different perspectives of where other people are coming from is just awesome. And that's, one of the things I really like about playing in Treebeard, just seeing everyone else's ideas and, seeing how something evolves just on everyone's different kind of mindset.
Yeah, it really helps as well because they're much better musicians technically, I would say, than I am. Like I write the stuff, but in terms of like bass playing and lead guitar work and that kind of thing, even with drums, I'm probably the least proficient at my instrument in the band. But so when I'm playing the demos and stuff, the parts are a bit messy and they don't sound ideal, but as soon as I put it with these guys, it's like, oh, yep, that's it. That's all I needed.
Well, I think that's fantastic.
He's being harsh on himself.
Yeah, well, I think it's really interesting. Like a demo is kind of like it's the sketch, it's like the rough draft if you're a writer. I always think in terms of like soundscapes or sound paintings, because like a Hendrix one time was asked, like, what is a like Ladyland? Why does it sound that way? And he said it's a sound painting. And then George Martin said the same thing about like Sgt. Pepper's. He said, "Oh, like, it's a sound painting. We use the studio as an instrument." And Hendrix and George Martin, they were all kind of doing that. They were all like in this kind of zone. And the idea is like you can start with a sketch, and there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, sometimes I like demos. If you think about Prince on Dirty Mind, he kind of just put demos out. He didn't. That album is very raw. It doesn't have a lot of production.
Yeah.
Sometimes the honesty of that, and if you get to grunge and punk, there's something about not overproducing, right? There's something about letting Happy Accidents stay in the mix. If you listen to like Exile on Main Street, you know what I mean? Like not keep trying to make it perfect, but letting it be what it is.
Yeah, for sure. I feel the same way with like the early Sabbath records, how like half the guitars are out of tune and, drum hits where there shouldn't be drum hits, but it's just, there's such a beautiful character in that. And it's just so real, especially compared to some of today's music where it's all, very, very professionally produced, which is also, a real big art to it. But there's, something amazing in the rawness of it all, I guess.
So you guys being a quartet and a traditional kind of rock band setup with the Pro Tools and the DAWs and stuff out there, do you guys get like kind of have the kind of struggle of, do I make it as perfect as I can, or do I rehearse it and just lay it down the way we rehearsed it? So do you guys kind of work through that?
I think we're very much of the belief that we want to do as little post-production work as possible, and we want to play live and for it to sound amazing, and then we record it. And thankfully we have an absolutely amazing producer as our guitarist, Josh Bills. He runs a studio called Vagabond Studios, which is just out of his house. But the production, I'm sure you hear if you listen to the Treebeard album that he did, it's just like world-class stuff. Like he's a really, really talented guy. And I think a lot of that comes, I think a lot of that comes from just his stance on enhancing the talent of what, of kind of what's there already and not fucking with it too much.
That's the
he just, he's just an amazing producer. And I think we're all on the same mindset of, we don't want to play our instruments kind of averagely and go back and fix it all. We want to nail the takes and get things really, really good. And I think as well that helps when you play live as well, because it sounds like the record. And, when people see you live, they're like, oh, it sounds like the record. It's like, we recorded it like that.
If you go in the box, right, and you go and do 64 tracks, and you like overdub and do all these things and cut and paste things all around. Yeah, you can do that, but like it's like I was reading an article about like Wilco and Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. Now that wasn't like in the box, but it was an experimental album where they would go and take a song and then deconstruct it and move things around and do all these crazy things they were doing. And it's very hard to play live. And they're actually trying to do that now. They're actually rehearsed it real heavy and are trying to do it. And it's super difficult because it's like a Sgt. Pepper type of thing. It's like there's a lot of backward stuff. There's stuff that didn't, it's not naturally easy to play. Like you get a band like the Almonds, they can just go out there and they play like blues fusion songs and they can go all over the place. But it's easier to play, in my opinion, because it's like you're feeling it. But if you construct something that's like on purpose to be difficult, that's hard to do.
I feel like with our music, it would have been very easy to get into the trap of playing along to tracks and stuff, which, we talked about at first because there are a lot of guitar layers and samples and synths and things like that going on in certain songs where the song would be drastically different. Maybe if we were to try and execute that live. So instead, we only really use samples for the voice the voiceover lines and
Mhm.
things like that. There's no like instruments or anything coming through in tracks, and while it may sound a little different to the album, the fact that it is a live performance kind of fills that out, I think, and it really allows us to sort of stay in the moment, I suppose, and just keep
Well, yeah, I'm a
everything
big
as
believer
real as it
in
can
that.
be.
Like, one of the things like I'm a big music fan. I've seen tons of bands from like the Who and actually when Entrance was still playing with them, and I went to Woodstock when Woodstock was there, saw Nine Inch Nails on stage, and
Oh,
Wow.
really? You saw that?
and I
That's
saw
right.
the Green Day Mud event.
Oh, that's awesome.
But what I always get kind of disappointed when I see some modern, so-called modern rock band shows up at the stage, right, and they're running the song right out of the box, and they're
Yeah.
totally locked in, and it sounds
Yeah.
just like the single, and I'm like, I'm a guy that would go see Funkadelic for 3
Yeah.
nights in a row, and they would sound different. They sound like a jazz band because they
Yeah.
just sound like Miles Davis or something because they're just changing it up. Or I see the Almonds, and even though they're playing blues guy, they would do it differently. Dickie Betts does the solo, like he's in the spirit, but he'll go off and do different things. And to me, it's like, why do you lock yourself in so you have no creativity
Yeah.
when you're
Yeah.
going live? To me, if you're a musician, it takes all the fun out of it. Why would
For
I
sure.
put myself on a rail like a
Yeah.
video game, and I'm
For
stuck
sure.
on
Yeah.
a rail?
That's a good metaphor.
Some
Yeah.
of my favorite live sets that I've seen have actually been where bands have made mistakes that I'm sure they would tell you like, oh, that was a bad thing, but like it made the show for me. Like just, a pedal being, dialed in wrong and delay being all over the place, or, something that makes it sound different and really special, and that you saw that special moment, I think is much more exciting than hearing a band playing note for note 100% perfect. So
Yeah, I mean, you had some bands like the Eagles, not to put them down, but they used to find their own members if they didn't do the song exactly as Hotel California. On the Hotel California tour, they were like, these songs got to be in the box. Like, and there was no box at that point. They just made themselves play them so tight that the band was like, it wasn't fun. And they kind of
Yeah.
destroyed themselves because they created this tension that they were having no fun at all. And I'm like, well, why would you do that?
For sure. Yeah. I think that's a big part of it as well, is like you got to remember to have fun with it as well and get that enjoyment from the creative outlet. Like I've, done bands before where I've, wanted to like take it real seriously and, we've got to play perfect live and stuff. And you end up just beating the fun out of it. And, I think what we do with this band is really try to enjoy it as much as possible and not get too stuck up on that stuff. And I think it shows live as well because you're not anxious about, I got to play everything note for note right.
Yeah, I think you put a
fun
lot
with
of unnecessary pressure and tension on the band that
For sure.
if you let yourself kind of just go, and like that's why I've always kind of had loved like funk and jazz, because it's kind of within jazz you've got a set structure, but you can go off and then come back.
Yeah.
And progressive rock and roots rock kind of does that. And I've always been into it because the similarities between like fusion and free jazz and funk and like that kind of like like funk rock is that you can come out of something and come back, and you can get tight and then you can get loose and you can go back around, and it's just fun. And when I play with guys that are into that mode, it's like we don't even have to tell each other what we're doing. It's like we kind of look at each other and you kind of know if I decide to do something different, then they go do something different, and we all kind of can just do it. And it's just like nobody's asking what's the chord changes. We're like, no, we're not talking. We just do it. But it's kind of like feel. You have a feel based thing, I think if you have a unit like your band, you guys got a feel, right? You guys know kind of instinctively where you're gonna go, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think we do play off each other really well, and I think as well you can see how well a band does that when they make a mistake live. Which is it's because I think if the band members don't know each other enough and their playing styles, that can when things might derail. But I think with us, we're all kind of quite familiar with one another, and if something happens to go wrong, we can pick it up pretty easily because we're all really familiar with how, you know, what each other guy's thinking. And yeah, I think that's a big I guess that reveals when a band sort of makes a mistake, you know, how well they know each other live.
Yeah.
I think that's really important, especially if, you know, you think about all these guys in the box. Not that I don't have boxes, man. I've got like high stuff, but I love my, you know, you see it behind me. I got all my Moogs.
Yeah.
You know, I've got nothing about Moogs and hardware sense, and I don't even use a DAW. I use hardware recorder because I like to just capture stuff raw into a hardware recorder. I use like, you know, Zoom R20s and R24s and stuff like that. And to me, like if I'm taking a Moog, Moog's inherently, like it takes 20 minutes to warm a Moog up. It's analog. It behaves differently every day I turn it on. And I kind of like listen to what it does, and it's like, oh, I'm going to go with that. I kind of let it tell me what I'm going to write. And that's what I like about it, because for an electronic instrument, it's kind of like a guitar, because it kind of like whatever you put pedal or something you put on it, or however you feel that day, it acts like that. It can act more organic than any kind of hardware box that people are using today. And that's why I try to tell people when I produce other people and they're totally in the box, I'm like, you maybe want to think about using like an organ or a piano or something to give it a little bit more honesty. You know, that's always been my whole thing in the mix, is like, and not that you can't do it with samples. If you're a really good producer, you can make a very interesting thing, like a guy like Earl Sweatshirt or something. You know, that guy, he's a poet. You know, you can get a guy that can do anything. You get the old school rappers that could do that, and I'm fine. I'm not against it. I just think people ought to think about, you know, how they do things, and be less willing to get rid of the happy accident. Because I think music, the whole point of music from the 60s and 70s, if you listen to any of the records, is there's tons of errors. You know, technically there are errors all over the old stuff, but it's actually beautiful. And the fact that the producers didn't get rid of the errors is like, to me, is like the core. And I always try to teach younger producers and people, is like, sometimes you got to stop yourself from trying to fix that.
For sure. I think, like you said, there's something really beautiful in playing off what your instrument is telling you, like whether it's a tube amp and it's, you know, breaking up a little bit more than usual, or, you know, and it's dictating how hard you're hitting on your guitar. I think you can get some really special moments by listening to your instruments and your gear and what's going on that day.
I think if there was a story about the Kinks, like the reason you really got me is they had a broken amp. And they didn't try to fix it, and they were real pissed off about it, and they say, oh, just go with it. And that's the kind of thing, to me, is like the stories like that, or even Keith Richards just doing whatever he wanted, right? And you try to put Keith's guitar playing into a DAW, you'd have a hard time trying to control the BPM. But he's not playing that way. And so it's like, that's why I tell people, like, could you track Keith on Exile? No, you can't. You can't put him in the BPM on one of these new tools. It wouldn't work. So but there's something great about that, and why wouldn't you want to aspire to maybe go in that direction? And I see more people are getting back into organic kind of feel-based music, which is what I'm all about. And I love the fact that you guys are doing that, because I think that's very important to have that, still have that out there. Because I think it's just something as a musician and a fan, I'm really into it. So you said you have a really great producer. He's a member of the band?
Yeah, he's the guitar player who we both had met just through, you know, networking within the scene we have here in Melbourne. Reese lived with him for a time as well. And I sort of involved him in the band initially because I needed someone to master the original recordings I had done with another person producing, who was a friend of mine called David Chabert. And those recordings were just me. So I played the drums, I played the bass, I played the guitars, I did everything. They're still out there on Bandcamp if people are curious, but not the best versions of the songs in my opinion. But yeah, Josh mastered those recordings, and then when it came time to sort of think about live performances, Josh offered to just be in the band as a guitar player, which I was like, yeah, let's do it. So yeah, we're very lucky to have him. He's yeah, a very good person and musician and asset for the band as well in that way. Yeah.
This year, are you able to actually play live and tour? Because given the COVID situation, is it actually now possible to play?
Yeah, so it's been a tricky start to the band for sure, because the lineup came together in late 2019. So we had 2 performances before the pandemic really took off. And I'm not sure how aware people are, but Melbourne, by a lot of metrics, had the most lockdown out of any city in the world. I think we did.
Yeah, I've talked to like the safety ward.
42 days or something.
240, I think it was 70 something.
Yeah,
It was a long time.
Yeah, I had talked to a band called the Safety Ward, and they had told me we had done a festival. I do an online festival every year.
Yeah,
and they were supposed to play live, and they couldn't because there was a lockdown. So they sent me a tape. Yeah, I'm aware of your lockdown issues.
Yeah, it was brutal for sure, and the band really did probably suffer a lot as a result in terms of lost time and lost opportunity, I suppose. But you know, despite all of that, we released the album in June last year, so nearly a year ago. And that was just before our second wave of lockdowns that we had that lasted up until about December or November, I think. So we've had a handful of performances in total. I think we're on like 7 or 8. However, the situation here in Australia at least seems to have largely subsided in terms of
now. So you got like summer tours planned?
We've got at the moment a day festival booked for June that I can't give too many details about right now, unfortunately. But we've got that, and it's more the motivation that we have to, you know, now that we can do it, we can actually get out there and start playing shows. And yeah, look, if festivals offer us, we'd absolutely be down. And, you know, we're starting to make more networks with the local scene, particularly as it pertains to like the prog and post-rock scene we have here in Melbourne.
So you're able to play those clubs, like the whole club scene's opening back up, so you can actually play?
More or less. Yeah, more or less it has. Because, yeah, thankfully, like here we've got like 98% fully vaccinated, and
oh, that's good. Not like us in the US. We're like at 70, 65, 70.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
Yeah, well, they kept us locked down until we did it. So we didn't have a choice, really, anyway.
I don't want to get into like why the people don't understand like the same thing you do when you get the measles vaccine. It's like you don't get that.
Yeah.
I guess you don't.
No, that's a whole can of worms.
It's just like okay, I just want to play because I used to play New York and Boston, and I haven't been able to do it. I just do live from my. You can probably see my stuff on Instagram, but I do these live performances, and I actually even have a PEG festival called the PEG Bedroom Producer Festival. And what I do is twice a year. I did one in February. I did one in July last year. I have podcast guests actually do a half-hour set from wherever they can through this platform and play. And so you guys are invited because every podcast guest is invited. We're going to try to do it again in July if you're open to doing it. We usually do it on a weekend from like Friday to Sunday. We run from like Friday, we run at like 6 o'clock at night to 11 o'clock at night. But on Saturday and Sunday, we run from like 7 in the morning to like 12 midnight. So we were able to get different bands from different time zones because we talk to bands all over the world. And so like, you know, if you guys wanted to play like on a Saturday in July, we could run at 6 or 7 in the morning, like the way we're doing now. It's just we go and we sound check everybody, make sure they can do it. But being a band that actually plays instruments, that's just having your audio interface connect to this, and that's not that hard.
Yeah.
It's like the bands that use DAWs, they take me like an hour to like get them to actually sound check because all the drivers and stuff don't want to work.
Yeah, no, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
We'd have to check with the other two guys if they're available and such. But yeah, we'd love to line that up. That'd be great.
Yeah. If you just have a way to webcam it and then send it, this StreamYard's kind of cool. It can take 2 webcams.
Mm.
Just it has the ability to do 2, and you can use OBS. You bring like 4 or 5 cams in.
Yeah.
So you know how to use that. But yeah, we can get into that. But we just like what we like to do is like the same way we interview bands. We like to give you during this pandemic. We've given bands an opportunity to actually play in this festival, to give themselves a place to like show their fans that they're still playing. And that's all we try to do. To give, because we think it's important. And live music is a big part of being an artist. It's kind of how you present yourself, and I think it's how most bands actually even earn the living. That's the way it works. We do ask about streaming. One of the questions we ask, and kind of segging into that, is like bands, pre-pandemic, it's like you survive by getting in an econoline van and going from club to club across the U.S. That's how a lot of bands in the U.S. survive. Is they get a following and they just build it up. Their streaming doesn't really give them that much money. There's actually, selling T-shirts, selling merch, showing up at the club. That's how they actually earn a living. Is that the same thing like in Melbourne?
For sure, yeah. I suppose with streaming, it's one of those things where it's very convenient, and I get the appeal definitely as a listener. Like, I use Spotify. I won't be dishonest about that. I absolutely understand where artists especially are coming from when they do have grievances with the way streaming is set up. And fundamentally, I don't think it's going away, unfortunately. So there needs to be some sort of reckoning where a more fair system is developed for artists. Because the way I understand it is essentially record labels sold out artists in terms of the royalties and how that works.
Yeah, we get like micro pennies. It's like 0.04.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty cooked. So that's sort of my position on it. And, I understand why a lot of bands also boycott a lot of the streaming services and that kind of thing.
Yeah, because in the U.S. we've got some issues with like podcasters getting like $100 million, right? And then musicians getting 0.04 of a penny.
Yeah,
so I'm a podcaster. I don't get that kind of money, but like, how can your music platform? A lot of musicians are kind of upset that like you're a music platform and you give this political podcaster $100 million, and you've got working musicians, and you can only give us 0.04 of a penny. That in itself, to me, is like it shows that you don't even value the artist.
Yeah.
Because it's just whether it's political or not, it's just the idea of the valuation of the artist's work. It's kind of a slap in the face to like, why are you giving this guy all this money out of the pie of everybody's subscription when you think you should give us like 5 cents, not point. Give us something. I mean, even back in the day, record labels on a $9 album were giving you like 10 cents. So there was never there was always kind of a problem. It's just the way they work. And I think musicians have had to figure out how to do merch and T-shirts and sync licensing. That's what a lot of what I do. I do a lot of sync licensing to get my music licensed on Twitter. I mean on Twitch, so that gamers, like I joined like BMI, songwriters, thing, and then I got a licensing deal where if a Twitch game player plays one of my songs, I get way higher rate than I do off of Spotify. And that's the kind of stuff you got to do. You got to, and if I go play on a commercial and don't say I'm the ghost for 30 seconds, I make more money all year than I would from my catalog. But in order to do my ghost music, I do stuff like that so I can kind of do it. But it's like I'd rather just do ghost music, but sometimes I gotta do other things so I can keep on doing ghost music.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's kind of like we all have to bite the bullet.
Yeah, I think luckily for us, we're in a really fortunate situation where we all have kind of side gigs away from music that actually help us pay rent and help us pay our bills, and we're not looking at music as a profit driver for us because there's just, so little money in it, unfortunately. But we do, there is things that, if we can get to if we can make the band on a bigger level, there's things like merch and vinyls that people are really keen for. And that's sort of, like you said, touring and door sales. And like, that's the stuff that makes bands, at our size money, not Spotify streaming, unfortunately.
Running your own vinyl, you can make from 1,000 or 10,000 vinyls, you can make more money than you do from streaming all year. If you do it yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's such a shame though, because here in Australia, I don't know if it's like this all over the world, but there's been lately like a huge issue with distribution and manufacturing of vinyls. Like it just takes so long.
I think a plant burned down. Like at the beginning of the band, there was a vinyl plant. There was like not that many of them. One of them like went toast.
Yeah.
But I don't understand. Vinyl is so profitable. Why wouldn't an investor say, well, maybe I should build 5 of these plants?
Totally.
And I'm like, everybody wants vinyl, and then you're going to let that one plant go and build a new one. I'm like,
yeah, totally.
I'm like, I don't get it.
Yeah, me too. And it's a shame because all it takes is like one huge, like I know this happened with Fleetwood Mac. Apparently they were like, oh, we're re-releasing Dreams or whatever they're rumors, sorry. And all the vinyl plants were just like, we're just doing this Fleetwood Mac repress. We don't have time for your little local vinyl. And it's like, okay, great. How else are we supposed to make money? Just because
what I love about vinyl though, it kind of goes back to, I'm a child of the 70s. And we're kind of getting near the end of the podcast, but one of the cool things about vinyl that I loved is the fact that you could work with an artist, do a concept picture for the album, right? Have liner notes, have a poster, could have stickers. It became more of an art project for the whole thing, right? So, and I'm kind of an album guy. Like I know everything today is kind of Spotify singles, and that's another question before we close. But like I kind of grew up with concept albums, like Pink Floyd and Tommy and Quadrophenia, even Styx, is the idea of being able to, even Meatloaf, but the idea that you could have an album, you're going to listen all the way through and there's a story. And I always really dug that. I thought that's really cool. And I do see that in hip hop, people do that. You have a lot of hip hop concept albums and people are willing to listen to 70 minutes all the way through. But in other genres, people say, oh, you can only do singles. I see in hip hop, you still can do concept albums. So I think it's just that if you can get your audience engaged, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we are very much in the mindset with Treebeard that we write albums, not singles. And if you listen to Nostalgia, it's very much, I think, a pretty obvious journey, even though there's not lyrics across the whole thing, but you can totally feel the journey of just, disaster to calm to, it really has a sonic progression. And, like you said, I think that's the best way to listen to music is to hear the bigger picture as opposed to, I'm going to put on this 3-minute song and,
that's what the vinyl kind of forced you. Like when I was a kid, I would go with my brothers and friends in the basement and listen to Dark Side of the Moon. And because it's a record, you kind of had to sit there and you didn't pick up the needle and move it around. I listened to like Songs in the Key of Life by Stevie Wonder, and I would listen to the whole thing. That thing's like it's like 3 records, and it's kind of so I'm kind of naturally predisposed to listening to more than just one song. But the kids today, they're so into this like jumping around a playlist, they never get to hear like a complete thought from any one artist. And I think that kind of missing something when you don't listen to the complete picture of an artist, because to me, the deeper tracks on a record are the things that really show what an artist can do. Like the single is cool, but the deeper tracks beyond the single, I think, show what an artist really is, who they are.
Yeah. Like we, before the album didn't even have a single. The album just kind of released and we kind of went off what people were saying about it and what songs seemed to stick out when it came to making videos and putting extra promo into and that kind of thing. Because like certain people would pick up on this one song and were like, all right, clearly people seem to like this one, so let's give those people something cool and, make a video, or, let's emphasize that when we play live and things like that. So we would not serve singles very well, I think, because all of our songs are quite long and quite dense. So
you're kind of like in the Genesis Pink Floyd mode, or even like the Yes mode of progressive rockers. I mean, like I always run into problems because my songs are like 8 minutes, 10 minutes. I'm trying. I mean, I like Funkadelic, and I like Yes, and I like Genesis. I like the Peter Gabriel Genesis. And there you've got songs that are like, they got some songs that are like 20 minutes. And that's kind of where I go. I'm a big fan of progressive rock. And I like the key changes. I like the kind of operatic things that you can do. And I like to tell stories. And there's something about, like, I can't do it in 2 minutes. I have a hard time. Now, sometimes I've been able to do like a 3-4 minute song because I know you got to have a single. Like, even like you're saying, like even like Tommy's got the Pinball Wizard, right? Tommy's this big rock opera, but the single is Pinball Wizard, and that's catchy as hell, and it works. But the rest of the album is not like that. You can't find it.
Well, they famously hated that song. Like Pete Townsend hates that song, I'm pretty sure, from what I know.
Yeah, he just kind of was forced. I think his producers say, this is cool that he did his rock opera, but the record label needs a single. So do a single. And that's kind of like what the labels do. It's just like, okay, I just did this big idea. You guys said you're for it. Now you tell me I got to do like a 3-minute song just because you want it. So, okay, fine. I'll figure it out.
I think it's good to have one of those songs thinking in the mindset of drawing people into the bigger picture. But I think it's not something, I think, we're definitely not in single mode with our songs. And I think we're actually kind of blessed that we don't have a massive label, supporting us. I don't know I don't know what the future will look for us, but I think it's really kind of nice that we're at this position where we have 100% control over what we do. And, we don't have to do stuff we don't want to.
I think it's very interesting that you get bands like Pearl Jam and Wilco and Radiohead. They drop their labels.
Yeah.
Because they they didn't want to get forced into the Spotify single world. These bands still do albums, and they still want to do it that way, right? And the world isn't that way, but they do it that way. And the thing is, their fans are willing to follow them. And maybe they're not getting 10 million. Maybe they're not doing that, but they got enough of a base that they can do okay running it themselves. And I think that's the future of music. When you see bands like Radiohead and Wilco and Pearl Jam running it themselves, and then doing like what Pearl Jam records every concert and then puts it out for their fans, so they can always get every single version of them. Pearl Jam concerts are like documented, and that kind of thing. Like a label was like, why would I do that? It's like, well, you're not getting it. Like the Pearl Jam fan likes that. So I think there are things you can do at a micro level when you're running your own business, and music is a business. But like if you're running your own art, you can make a decision that, I'm going to record these concerts and I'm going to give them to my fans, right? Why not?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's so cool, like living in the digital age, I guess, being able to actually just get a digital aggregator and get our music on, a streaming service without having to go to a record label and say, we'll sell our souls, just get our music out there. Like it's really cool. And there's so many bands that are doing just really unique things to make additional money. Like that band, the Sleep Society thing, While She Sleeps, and they've got like a whole like membership thing where they just are dropping content to their members and like just these little things that are just so cool.
I think that's a really cool thing. You can do like USBs, you could do like 45s, you could go and do, like I saw this Russian company doing reel-to-reels. This is a company that was actually building reel-to-reel packages for bands that could put their album on a reel. Like, I don't know how many people have reel players, but people are doing cassettes again. They're doing vinyl. They're doing the USBs. They're doing all these things. And I this thing, in vinyl that has like holograms on it and all kinds of cool stuff. It's just like you can do these micro batches and build a fan club, like you said. And the interesting thing is like Prince, I'm a big fan of Prince. He went and did this 1-800 New Funk thing when he left Warner's. And I have all the stuff that he did when he did that. And you could get tapes and posters and all kinds of special stuff from this big artist, Prince. He was selling like an indie guy. And you're getting all this like very, it's super worth a lot of money now. But it's like it was very micro level stuff he was sending out. He wasn't sending millions of it out. And it was kind of cool that they got this big artist was acting like an indie artist and was doing all this stuff. They now a lot of indie artists are doing what he did. And he basically created an online store and a website and subscription. He would send, you get like 4 or 5 singles a month. And then he'd do this weird radio show where he did humor. He actually did joke. He had his own like comedy show. Would go for like 50 minutes, and you do these like sitcom like stand up little like stories. And it's super rare. You can't really find it because they did these WAV files, and you just get it. But all I'm saying is like you can do whatever you want. And I think that's what people. I think the future of music is a band deciding what they're going to do and how they're going to do it, and then the world coming to them, right, because they dig it.
I think for sure. I think it's very easy, and we are definitely guilty of this as well. But a lot of bands get stuck, I think, in the trap of, we record an album, we put it out, we wait for people to ask us to play shows, and or we book shows ourselves, and we do that. And I think there's a lot of opportunity, for us and for every local band to think a bit outside of the box and, do things like what you were saying with Prince and stuff. Like there's just, we're a creative industry. So, hopefully in a few years, bands at a local level are doing things completely different and we're, exploring new things. I think it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's the future, is just understanding that, you can be successful, like, at a micro level, and you don't have to sell 10 million records to be a band. You could live in a world where you're hitting way lower than that and actually still be able to get through. And then you don't, get a deal where if you don't hit the guidelines for the label, that you do 1 album or 2 albums, then they drop you. With the way the world is now, you can keep going for 10 years, 15 years. However long you want to go. There's no like 2 album deal, and if you don't make it done,
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's part of the bonus of being in quite a niche genre and scene of music like post rock kind of is, where it's not 4 5-minute, 3-minute catchy pop songs. It's very long, expansive, layered, soundscapey kind of stuff, and it's also a very niche international audience where with us, most of our fans are not located in the US. If we're going off streaming and YouTube views and things like that, they're not in Australia. They're in the US, they're in Turkey, they're in Germany, they're in I think there's a couple in Mongolia. Like it's a very wide expanse. So our music doesn't really fit that mold traditionally anyway. So with the sort of tools that we have with social media and the internet and the globalization of music, I guess it's actually a good thing for us, I think, in our genre. And it's kind of I suppose picking up the pieces of the former music industry that was operating before the age of the internet, and just sort of trying to make sense of it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I've been living in a world where, I'm a very kind of small niche artist doing the weird stuff I do, my expansive sound experiments. But I found podcasting as my other sideline. And this has kind of, people say, well, why would you take time from doing your production on your own music and then do this? In my opinion, what happened was, like, as a musician, I'm always a fan first. And I found that talking to bands, being a musician, it helps me as an artist because I learn different perspectives. I get to hear new music, gives me new ideas every band I hear. because before I do a podcast, I got to research the band, I got to listen to the band, I got to understand what their vibe is. And as a musician, listening to new stuff always helps you. And I think, and then
Definitely.
building up a rep that you can collaborate or work with people and get them into a scene. Everything today is about a scene. So that this podcast has a scene. We do a festival. All the people who come on get to be a part of that festival. We're trying to build our own scene. I think the way the world is building a scene like that with all of these podcast guests are in this scene. Eventually, we've been talking to people in New York trying to figure out if we could do a live version of our online festival and actually do like an independent festival and build it like Coachella, like a very indie type of Coachella type thing, dealing with bedroom producers and emerging artists and get sponsors to help us. And there's been some interest in doing that once the pandemic gets more under control. And so, yeah, you just got to figure out a niche, and maybe I started here, but I could end up there. That's kind of how you can build something and then help other people. You pay it forward. Like eventually, maybe I get you guys to come. If I get a sponsor, the idea is the sponsor would bring the indie bands and take care of you and bring you to the festival. That would be the idea. That's my ideal setup. And I wouldn't make people pay. I'm going to try to get sponsors to, come in and do this thing to show people there's this scene. And that's what I'm trying to build. And it's working. I've been doing this since 2018. I mean, we started with like 2,000 people listening. Now we're at like 36,000. We're slowly building. And, our goal is to hit like 100,000, 200,000. And then get pushed higher. Now, our other thing is like once we get pushed, I want to get told to only talk to A-level artists. No, we still want to deal with indie, emerging, new artists. And that's kind of like our deal. But we're glad that you came on the program, and like anytime you have like a new record or a new project, and like I said, if you guys want to be part of that July festival, let me know. We can talk offline. That would be cool. But thank you, everybody. Check out Treebeard. The link's been there. Treebeard, not bird. I was thinking about the free bird. Treebeard. Maybe where I never asked you. Like Treebeard, where'd that come from? What does that mean? Before we go.
I suppose it's obviously a reference to the Lord of the Rings, the book or the films, whatever people prefer, I guess.
Okay.
At the time, it was a cool band name, and it kind of fit with the concept of the album about
Tolkien. So it's Tolkien, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought it was, but I didn't want to just presuppose. But I want everybody.
No. I'm not that original. I couldn't have come up with that on my own. So yeah, it's that, and it just kind of ties in with the themes of the music I was writing in terms of like nature fighting back against humanity and climate change and a lot of things like that, which we probably don't have time to get into too much now. But it's a Lord of the Rings reference. I'm not gonna lie about that.
I love reference. I've talked to a band before. They had like a physics formula reference as the name of their band, and I was like, that's pretty cool. It's like I like how bands come up with different ideas, and it's just interesting. And I forgot to ask you what the history of your name, what it meant. But thank you guys for being on again. This will be if everybody wants to listen. It's going to permanently be on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and my Facebook channels. I'll give you those permanent links. We're also going to send you MP3 and MP4, so you can do whatever you want through our WeTransfer partner. And thank you very much again for being on. This will be on Spotify video podcast within like an hour. And that's something that people don't realize is Spotify has a video podcast program, not just audio. And we're in the beta on that. So every podcast we do gets done as a video on Spotify. So we will give you that within an hour once it's up.
Sweet. Awesome. Thank you so much for having us on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Cheers. Take care.